okay, Guru Nation, Dragon Nation, we are co-hosting a very special podcast. Listen, this is why we talk. People talk charts when it comes to stocks. People talk career growth and data when it comes to research trials. But what is it all for? It's for patient, like extending our lives, saving our lives, making our lives better. All of us, we're all patients at one point, you know. And Chris White is on, and this dude. I mean, first of all, Chris, you're from Dallas. There we go. Everyone, get this book.
Yeah, baby.
All right. If you want to learn about tumor infiltrating lymphocytes,
Thank you.
this is
Thank you.
where my two worlds collide with the investing. I love the biotech investing community, but I think they needed to be grounded in reality a lot of time. Like biotech scanner probably even more thinks so than me. And then the clinical research community, which sometimes doesn't see like the end result because these are big pharma and like the ivory tower, and they don't even call you, Chris, a patient. They call you a subject.
I'm C484, baby. I'm that data
See,
point.
you don't even have a name, man. So on this show, we're giving you a name. You are Chris White, right? This
Yes,
dude
sir.
has a powerful story, and we're gonna talk from the perspective of what clinical trials did to you. Like it saved your life. We want to talk about the process, how you found out about studies. You can find from the book, but we give people like the little cliff notes, and then when you get to the trial, we talk specifically about the iovance, and that's where biotech scanner. This dude probably is the most researched person on iova. Anyone I know. So it's just amazing to be able to co-host this episode with you guys, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on in. You guys are both in Dallas, like you were
Yeah,
about
man.
to biotech without even realizing I was gonna. Our brains were on the same wavelength
Yep.
because I was thinking about both of you guys today, and I was like, no, there's probably a way we can do it. There's probably a way we can do it. And then boom, you guys both
If
said
there's a will,
yeah.
there's a way, man. Straight up. I tell you what, man. If there's one in a million, somebody's got to be the one.
Yeah.
You wrote that in the book too.
Straight up. That's how it is.
Dan basically ruined everything, ruined my entire. So this morning, and Chris can confirm this. Reach out to Chris. Say, hey, what's up, man? Hey, you're in the DFW area. Let's hang out. Let's go grab lunch. And he's like, sure thing. Let's do it. I said, well, you're going to NYC here, sharing your story here next week, I believe. Is that right, Chris?
Yes, sir. Next week, AVBCC conference. Yep. I'm doing the pre-day conference on the 21st, and then hanging out through the 22nd, and coming back on the 24th.
Yep. So that was my plan. It's like, hey, let's go grab lunch, and after that, and then because we actually have plans to do this podcast after you get back from New York, and so I was gonna surprise the entire community.
My
with
bad.
You and me at lunch. And then around 2 or 3 o'clock, Dan texted me and said, hey, you want to hop on with Chris? I was like, go ahead, let's go. Because,
same brain length, man. Same wavelength.
That is crazy. But
yeah, there's a theory that our thoughts are not even ours. Like we just tap into some greater consciousness. This is further proof of that, I think. Anecdotal, subjective proof.
Yeah. Now you're talking about more of quantum theories now.
That's right. That's right.
But
man, I'm a believer. You can will it. If you want it, you can will it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I said it yesterday. I tweeted this out and you didn't know this, Chris. So February 16, 2024. That's the day that the big day, right?
Oh no, yeah, I totally remember that whole afternoon, my man. 100%.
So,
oh yeah.
Let me ask you this, because like 30 minutes before the PR came out from Iovance announcing the FDA approval of Metastatic, I tweeted your story. You were talking to somebody. I found your story on YouTube. I tweeted it out, and now 30 minutes later, the PR came out, do you remember who that person that you talked to? You interviewed somebody. I'm sure it's probably a month prior.
I was at the gym in my neighborhood working out. It was 3:30 our time here in DFW, and it was Cody Barnett from the Melanoma Research Alliance who texted me and said, "Hey, they just announced that it got its approval because it was actually 1 week before its new PDUFA date. The original PDUFA date was in November of 2023, and then it got postponed towards February, I think February 24th or somewhere around there that week. And then so I was going to the MRA scientific retreat and patient forum, and remember there was a lot of content and schedule that was very heavy on cell therapy. But yeah, I think it was like a Friday afternoon at 3:30, of course, because that's how that's how you roll, when you release like a PR announcement is, and then it was like, oh, it got its accelerated approval, man. And I just like dropped down, just started crying and shit. And I walked my ass home from the gym and stuff, and then made a post about it. I was like, oh, damn. Like,
wow.
So excited because, I still, that was in February. I didn't finish my 60-month consent until August. So, but like, I was just like, oh man, like this is a huge step, not just for me personally, but like in history, what I'm saying? Like, because 90% of all cancer is solid tumors, and this is a one-time treatment. And like, literally, like you roll down the stats of my diagnosis and the odds and blah, blah, blah. Like, the 1 in a million, it was probably like 1 in a couple of million or even less. I mean, you'd have to get some mathematician up there to like really pull it up, dude. But
and hopefully with this drug, it's more than 1 in a million. Like, hopefully it becomes standard.
Well, that's the hope, man, because it's really not like a drug. It's more of like a process. It's your cells. Whatever it is that made you sick is the same thing that's going to make you better. And it's not altering it or anything. It's just taking the exact same thing and just making a lot of it and then giving it back to you. And it sounds crazy, but it's like literally like it's the only thing that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, you're not, nothing else.
Your story, man. There's so many things, but what really stood out to me, Chris, and I kind of pay attention to your behavior from the beginning to the end, because that's important, because you want to get, to know the person. How is this person responding to each of the events that led up to you getting treated with Amtagvi? And what I noticed and what I appreciate about you, Chris, is that that attitude of being rocky that you talked about in the book, that come on, let's go. We should have done this like yesterday, or like no doors could be closed on you. You were taking the fight to what was hurting you, instead of just waiting for things or a process to play out. You take the initiative to save your own life. And that's what was so courageous of you. And then you add on top of that the motherly element of your mother, who was on the phone begging an insurance company to approve you for radiation treatment so you can qualify for the clinical trial that you have no idea that's gonna work or not. So when I share my research about Iovance to the community, to the investment community, it doesn't matter if they're investing or not. And to see that passion, to see that desperation that you had on your life, but there are people in the community saying, yeah, man, but the treatment is so rough on the patient. I'm like, yes, it is rough, but what choice do they have? So can you share with us your perspective at that moment, that lowest point in your life, and what it meant to get in the trial and get healed?
100%. Like, I had this attitude from the time I was diagnosed through through all of it, to where if I was going out, I was going out swinging, and I was not going to lose for a lack of effort. Okay. And therefore I had this like whole Fight Club mentality, and like I totally went Tyler Durden on it. I've said it in so many speeches and so many other places, but it was like I had to become so positively optimistic, because I was never told that there was a 0% chance. But as long as there was a chance, somebody had to be that chance. And I was like, you know what?
Why not me?
Why not me? And I don't give a shit. Excuse me, like, but I was like, man, like, you giving me everything you got, and I will, at least I can say, like, I gave it my all, and therefore, and that was the thing. And it was like, out of the 153 total patients, that were submitted as part of the trial, I'm one of the 12 subsets for mucosal melanoma, but I'm, part of the cohort 4, and out of those total 12 subsets, I'm one of the 6 responders. And not only that, the average age of diagnosis was 70 years old, and I was 36 years old when I was diagnosed, and I quickly went from stage 3C to stage 4, and all the odds were stacked against me. And it was like, man, what's my all my nieces and I never had kids. I had to do fertility preservation. In fact, I'm trying to figure out if I can even afford to, like, it's up this month. Like, I can't afford that shit. Like, I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I was just like, what's my legacy going to be to, like, my nieces and nephews? How are they going to remember Uncle Chris? You know what I mean? And so I was just like, it's got to be something that's, of importance and all that. And it's the amount of heavily pre-treatment that I had to go through. Like, it's like you start at the bottom and then work your way up, kind of a scenario. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay. And that's what the Tilvance 301 is all about right now, is like for primary, is for a first line. You know what I'm saying? Correct. So instead of having to be a second line, and like the whole, like, that's what a lot of patients DM me about, is they're real scared about, should I do this? I've heard all these like horror stories, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's because it was only given to them as a last option. But if you're approached about it as soon as you qualify, you're more likely to, like, it's going to benefit you and it's going to work. And that's what Chris, we call curative.
Can you walk us through that process? Because, okay, so oncology studies are different, very different beast. What did you know about clinical research? Because from the book, it doesn't sound like much. And then who first gave you that option, right? Like, and how many options were you presented, and how did you ultimately end up in the TIL Gavi option?
I can go through all of that. So, my whole perception is, you get diagnosed and it's so scary, but you only know what you know. And my whole thought process was, clinical trials equals lab rat, equals maybe not. So you
thought this.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like,
why did you think that, or like, why do you think you thought that?
That's just what, like, life and history, like, was presented to me. Like, there was nothing. This is
so many people just lab rats. I think people in our industry. That's exactly it.
And it's like, if the average person, like, they're not proactively just like looking like, hey, if anything ever happens to me, what do I do? Like, they don't know. They're not paying attention. Like, it's not within their interest. And and like, I was the same as everybody else. And so when it happened to me, I'm like, okay, what are the options that are proven? Supposedly. And there wasn't really. There was these other things that might have had a chance, but it's like I said in the book, you throw spaghetti at the wall, you know what I'm saying? Maybe it might stick, because like immediately when I got diagnosed, I went to a local oncologist here, and they were like, hey, yo, your pathology is really rare. You're showing like, SOX 10, mark this, blah, blah, blah. She's like, I'm a hematologist, oncologist, but, and if it was like cut and clear, we could probably do something, but you need to see a specialist. And so that's when she was like, we found one. And that's why I started going back and forth to Houston. And once I got down there, they, told me exactly, like, it's called mucosal melanoma, makes up 1% of all melanoma, has no known causes, forms in mucous membranes. I remember asking about CAR T because I heard about it, but they told me like, hey, that's only for hematologic cancers, and you have a solid tumor cancer, and but there is immunotherapies, and that's what we're gonna be shooting for. There is some success, there's some successes there, so that is gonna be our our focus. Let's try to make sure we do these steps, and then focus on that because that's your best chance. And then so by the time I got down there, I had like 2 surgeries and then done a third, which was like a lymph node dissection surgery. And then I ended up doing fertility preservation, and ended up doing like radiation. And then when I went to go scan in November of 2018, I'm sitting there thinking like, man, I should be clean, but I kind of knew, like, I'm like, man, I got these lumps in my groin. I'm like, so it's kind of sketch. And then they did a little biopsy right before my appointment, and confirmed it, like, yeah, it's still there. So I knew I kind of had something, but I had no clue like that it had like exploded up in my abdomen and on my lungs, and went from stage 3 to 4. And I was like, oh man, and then within less than a month, I was doing combination immunotherapies. My thyroid had went out. I got put on palliative pain medicine. Like, dude, it's just like the world like just exploded on me. And so, it was just insane. And so it was like, man, like, I didn't, have necessarily like the time frame to soak it all in and to be guided on what was actually happening to me. You know what I mean? So I just kind of was like, I'm going to do whatever it is I got to do. And whatever the experts are telling me, is the best path forward.
Yep.
And then, my sister connected to a Facebook group, that was specific to my diagnosis. And I connected to it briefly and then removed myself because it was just like too much on my mental health to stay in that group, because there's not a lot of survival. But
There's a
one
lot
of
of
the
doom
things,
and gloom in that group, right?
oh, straight up,
Yeah.
man. Like, and one of the things was I went up and looking back the history of it, and I think it was during that December, January timeframe, my sister had asked about, or somebody had brought up TIL. My sister had asked about it.
So a
We went.
member of that group brought up TIL.
Yep. And
Okay.
then I saw it on my chart. We had asked about it in my January or February follow up in 2019, because I was scanning like every 6 weeks, going back and forth to DFW to Houston. And in January 2019, it had it also had metastasized to my kidneys and the neoplasms, and but it like my lung amounts went from 20 to 40 plus, and they just said innumerable amounts. And
Wow.
it was like, we got to get some of the major metastasis under control here. So we're going to shift gears to a little chemo plus targeted radiation and this and that. And we had asked about TIL, and they were just like, well, there's not enough time for that.
Wow. Who said that? Who said
I'm not trying to throw anybody
okay.
under the bus.
Were they the place doing the studies too, or you had to go somewhere else for them?
Yeah, so this is what I call like the captain of the ship.
Okay.
They were calling the shots and everything. And then so I was doing whatever he said. And then as mentioned in my book, I did all that. I did 6 of those combos, within like 5 months, plus chemo, plus radiation. And then I caught the colitis, and the colitis, like, put me in and out of the hospital and all of that for the summer of 2019. And then, when I came off of the colitis, like I, did a little bit of chemo, but it was too toxic to go back to immunotherapy. And my last follow-up in October of 2019, I was down there, and they were saying like, man, it's too toxic to go to the combo again. Like, they're looking at realities. And they literally told me that the day before I had came in for that checkup, that all of their staff that had, run TIL, got recruited out of there, and they didn't have any more. But they told me that they couldn't tell me about it because their boss was a consultant to the sponsor, and so therefore,
Whoa, hold on. Okay, because we're trying to figure this out. Me and Biotech Scan are really trying to like get under the hood of how people get referred, recruited when it comes to these things. So you had all the staff that were familiar with TIL were no longer there
well,
at the place you were.
the place where I was at. So check this out. Like their process was like the time it took to grow the cells at the time for what they had going on was twice as long. It was a 6-week process, not like the 3-week process from what I eventually ended up doing. And so I think like I was never able to confirm because it's not like they're calling me and checking up or anything, but like like my cancer was so aggressive that it wasn't really an option to look into that because so that's just what I was assuming. And so but once I had basically been like kind of ran out of options with them and they didn't actually have the program anymore, that's when they told me about it and then mentioned the sponsor's name. But there wasn't a location within Texas. But since I had a PPO insurance, I could go out of state, and the closest place was Aurora, Colorado. And I have family that lived there. So one, it was the closest place in physical location, but I also had a little bit of infrastructure to kind of help me out and everything. But that's when they told me that, it had been around for a while. They had run them trials forever, blah, 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 blah. But they couldn't tell me about it because it was a conflict of interest. And, but once I didn't have any options left with them, then, and I was basically like out the door to go figure something else out. That's when they told me about it.
So they had a conflict because one of the doctors, I assume, was the consultant for
their
the
boss
sponsor.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Gotcha. And so he can't look like he's referring people to. I got it.
One of my favorite thing about the book too, Chris, and I'm telling Dan and the rest of you guys listening and watching, as an investor in our Iovans, one of my favorite part was you have all of this crap going on, Chris. This colitis, you thought you in the trial, and then bam, you found that freaking tumor in the freaking brain, and then but you describe the moment you talk to your new team and you talk to the trial coordinator, and that is an Iovan staff. And that kindness, that calm, that person,
it's like night and day.
And so I was so encouraged by that here is the company that is conducting clinical trial to potentially saving a patient's life. Yet before the drug could impact the person's life, a staff member is already providing hope just by being kind to you when you were so stretched in every direction, from finances to of course health. I mean, everything was going down the drain, and here you are.
Wow.
Like this person had a calming effect. So talk about that for a little bit.
Shout out to the coordinators. That's awesome.
It was one of those things to where it's like, I had went and signed my consent in like early November of 2019. And then I went back like 2 or 3 weeks later, like at the last week of, it was like the week of Thanksgiving, I think, of 2019 to go do my resection so they could send my cells off. So I had to fly from Dallas to Denver so I could do my surgery, and then they could send my cells from Denver to Philly to the Navy Yard so they could grow my cells.
Gotcha.
And the actual ICTC was under construction, so they're only contracted, CDMO is actually the people that grew my cells. But anyway, still went to the same place, Navy Yard. And I came back and, and I was working, and I thought I caught a cold, and I tried to go call my oncologist to call me in something. She was like, you're in a washout period. Like, we can't do nothing. Like, you just gonna have to get some over the counter stuff. And I was like, what? And so she explained it to me, and I was like, damn, that sucks. And then I started like just clinically declining. And so I went in to do my baseline scans on December 6th. And then I went to see my local oncologist on the 10th to go over the results. And at that meeting, that's when they said, like, comparatively your CTs, like they're stable or gotten worse, which like I was used to. But then that was the first time they told me now I have a brain metastasis, and it was a 1 centimeter
Wow.
on my occipital lobe. And they were like, it kicks you out. And I'm like, what? And I was like, this is like the only thing that like is left. And they told me that, prior to me showing up, that they had called up to Denver and said, hey, like, he's got this Mets, like, and Denver had said that, there's a final infusion date. This is a cohort 2 phase 4 or excuse me, phase 2 cohort 4, and they have a final infusion date of January 15th of 2020. But to meet the requirements for the washout, like you would have to treat it. Yeah, you have to treat it and prove that it's stable or in reduction in order to meet the requirements. And that scan would have to be by December 25th. Well, that's Christmas, and like, the scan places aren't on Christmas, so it'd have to be on, December 24th. And they're telling me this on December 10th. And like they don't count weekends and stuff. And so I want to say, like, and it was that same day, and like my local oncologist, said, like, so what you would have to do is, is go to the radiologist. They would, get a consultation. You'd have to get some SRS, targeted radiation, but you'd have to get a mask made. You'd have to get an insurance approval, and then, but you would have to scan and meet that deadline. And so, I want to say it was maybe like the same day, like I went to go see the radiologist, and they were basically like, you're going to need like, 5 sessions of this, but before we can even make the mask, you have to have insurance approval. And so it was like, well, can we pay cash or something? They're like, nah, like, no, you have to have insurance approval. And so that's when like the fight was on, and that's why.
And this is during the trial, right? This is like you're in the screening phase, washout phase.
I'd already had my resection. My cells were growing. Like I was
and then they tell you like, hey, because of this brain metastases, you actually don't qualify.
I was originally supposed to spend like the holidays in 2019, like in the hospital. Like that's how I remembered it. I was like, oh, I was supposed to be admitted. Like I was supposed to fly out there on the 12th originally and get admitted like the 13th or 14th. And I knew I was going to have to stay like 2 or 3 weeks, and I would spend Christmas and New Year's, and that's how I was going to spend my holidays. And then they told me like, no, that whole timeline scrapped. Like you now have to get radiation. You can't go to Houston. There's not time for that. You just gonna have to do it locally. And
were they talking about dropping you from the study at this point?
They said if I could meet the timeline, or they said if I could get treatment and scan and be able to ship the disc from the scans, the results, by the deadline, then they would do it.
So it was all on you. They did not
100
help you with logistics or any of that stuff.
Yeah, like they told me this on the 10th. I had to scan by the 24th, so it was like 14 days, no business days. And it took 6 days, and then to get the approval. And then on that 6th day, I remember like we got the approval. The next day I went and got the mask made. And then the day after that, we started the radiation. I think that was on a Thursday. So we did Thursday, Friday, had to wait the weekend, and then did like Monday, Tuesday. And then on that Tuesday, I got 2 doses. So I got 5 sessions in those 4 days. And the next day after that, which was the 24th, then I went and scanned, and then I shipped my disc out to Colorado. And then like, I wasn't checking the portal. I didn't know about, the things I did now.
Is patient burden.
And
I'm only on chapter 4. So this is coming up later.
Yeah, that'll definitely, that's coming up. And then
but that's a crazy amount of patient burden, man. Like in our industry, what they talk about so much on LinkedIn is patient burden. We're making everything patient centric, but it doesn't sound like any of that was.
Well, nowadays, from what I've talked to some other patients, there's certain places have more of a role of a navigator of sorts. Not everywhere, but certain places, depending on where you're at and how active you are as a patient and requesting it and asking for it. Like, you can have someone that'll fight upon your behalf, but like as a patient, you have to be definitely upfront with telling everybody, like, I am willing, I am wanting, like, I don't care
Do you have
where
to
it
like
is or where
follow
it's
up?
at.
It's
Yeah.
like, is it like squeaky wheel gets greased type of thing?
Straight up, dude.
Uh,
The loudest, it's not
Yeah.
like, the necessarily like what's being said, but the loudest one is the room is the one that gets heard. You know what I mean? Like that's
hmm.
100% like what it is. And then, but
I
yeah,
Cancer is different, man. Because our
well,
studies, we go bend over backwards for our patients. We give them rides, we buy them lunch, they
well,
get
that's how it is
paid.
now. But like, was it
Yeah.
always like that? Was it like that in 2018,
Yeah,
2019?
it was. Since
Oh, yeah.
I've been on
I
05,
didn't
but
know you then.
I haven't done cancer only as a monitor, but I've heard cancer's like totally different. Patients are more on their own
Well,
because of standard of treatment and all this stuff. So it's like a special like
it
segment
also
of our
depends.
industry.
Are you in a private oncology setting? Are you like on
Hmm.
the educational kind of setting? Like I didn't like find out until I started doing some of my TIL talks with a handful of folks that like if you go and do your clinical trial with the NIH, they actually pay for all of your expenses. You don't come out of pocket for
Yeah.
nothing. Like
Mhm.
literally like airfare, hotel, like your treatment, blah blah blah. And, it's completely different than
Yeah.
uh private sponsor. I'm like, man, I didn't know any of that. Like, but it was
Yeah.
like good
If
for
we have
you. But
time, I'd like to get that into that with you as well,
oh
the
yeah,
financial aspects. But I know Biotech Scanner had some stuff to add. We're trying to get under the hood of this stuff, so
yeah.
So
Oh, we can
sorry
do
for the
whatever
back
you
and
want,
forth.
man. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I'm
So
not. I don't have a date or nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
was it the same lady, the same coordinator that gave you that good news that hey, your scan is actually stable and that you
it
are
was
now
actually
both?
it was the oncologist that
Okay.
ran a trial at CU Anschutz, and she actually like took over for the PI who ended up leaving to go to Regeneron.
Mm.
Okay.
Uh, but and she's now labeled like as the top PI for the entire trial. And out of all 57 global locations, CU Anschutz, out of any single location, had the most patients at a single location. But like literally, like within one appointment with her, she spent more time with me and was like more kind
Wow.
than than everything else added up. Like literally, like I had
Amazing.
it was every 6 weeks follow up, and then COVID hit, and then after that every 3 months, and we had to do telehealth, and then I had to go back on site. But every time I met with her, whether it was virtually or in person, there wasn't like, oh, I got another appointment, we got to go. Like she would spend the time, and I felt like she invested in me. And like, man, I tell you what, like that makes the biggest difference in the world. 100%. Like I say it loud and proud, sending love out to Dr. Teresa Medina. Okay.
Yep.
Dr. Teresa
Straight up.
Medina. I'm
Like,
gonna add her on LinkedIn right now.
Yep.
you know what? Like if
Teresa Medina.
she has zero presence on social media. And if you can find one, let me know. But if you go to my
Doesn't look like
profile,
I
like
can.
she's on one of my pinned pictures on my profile things, because I just think the world of her, dude.
And what was the center again? The name of the place you worked at?
It's UC Health, CU Anschutz in Aurora, Colorado. They're the Colorado Cancer Center.
Okay.
Like my grandfather on my mom's side was treated there in 2012, 2011, 2012 for I want to say it was lymphoma. And, he passed away. Like they didn't, CAR T wasn't exactly where it is now at the time, but I remember them talking a bunch about like platelets, and this was, I didn't know anything about platelets at the time. It was, what was that, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago? You know what I'm saying? Like I
Yep.
was it was a whole different planet for me. You know what I mean? And my grandmother, had passed away from lung cancer in 2001. She did like stained glass, and thinking about it now, like, there's definite treatments that would have like could have benefited her and saved her, and especially like in the cell therapy space, you know. And at the time it was like old school, you know, like chemo, radiation, like, you know, this archaic, you know, nonsense. But yeah, it was CU Anschutz Colorado Cancer Center in Aurora, Colorado. Like one of the things that stuck out with me, and I take this, like, I'm very proud to say this, but their staff, their nurses, you know what I mean? Just the kindness, dude. Like, it's totally sticks out. Like, they're just, it's just gold. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would be like telling my dad and stuff, because, you know, my family would be taking shifts, and you know what I'm saying, when I was in there doing all my IL-2s and chemo depletions and blah blah blah. And I was like, yo, go to Chick-fil-A and get that fruit plate or something, you know, let's bring something for the nurses, you know what I'm saying? Like, because they just they were just so on point, and like it made
They
the
worked their
biggest
asses
difference.
off too
Oh
at
my
some of these
god, dude,
places.
I cannot say enough, dude. Like, every time I had to go back for a follow-up scan, I would make a point to go by the BMT unit and just say hi. Once I published my book, I'd be giving out books and just, you know, telling them how much I appreciated them, and like,
What did they
thank you
say
so
when you give them
much.
the book? Like the first time you showed up with your books?
Well, you know, there's in the nursing world, you know, like, you know, you're not always at the same location for, you know, the same period of time. So, you know, that, like, you know, I had my my sheet that all the people signed the day I rang the bell and stuff. I'm like, are these nurses still here? You know what I'm saying? Like, if they are, like, will you please, like, give them my regards, tell them I said hi, if they, you know, this and that. But I was just like, you know, and I finished my consent, you know, last year, and then I did one more follow-up appointment in November of last year. But since then, you know, I had to change insurance. I'm not on PPO, I'm on HMO, and then, like, I'm not on consent anymore. So unfortunately, I haven't been back there since, you know, last November. But man, like, I just always look forward to going there and just trying to connect and, like, find I don't know where they're at. And I always would tell my doctor, I'd be like, you know, Dr. Medina, I'm like, you know, or any of them, I'm like, please, like, you know, if you ever connect or talk to them, please give them my regard, please tell them thank you, you know, please, you know, show them my, you know, my websites, my content, or whatever. Like, let them, you know, I want them to know that it's appreciated. I'm very grateful. Like, it, you know, it was night and day, like, you know what I'm saying, like, to what it meant to me.
Chris, I have talked about the drug that saved your life at length on Twitter, MTAGV, and I've been telling my followers that right now, in second line metastatic melanoma stage 4, there is freaking nothing else. Nothing else.
It's
Okay.
it's
There is
scary.
nothing else. So share with us, the audience, the entire treatment from lymphodepletion to IL-2, and then your scans afterwards. So they'll hear from a patient themselves.
All right. So starting the TIL process, right? To finish.
Yeah.
So so starting the process at the time, there wasn't any ATC centers, you know, obviously it wasn't approved, it was still in clinical trial process. So I had to travel. So it was,
and those are Gavi treatment centers, for those wondering what that is.
Yeah. Now they're, I think they're close to 70, around 70 or so, if not by the end of the year. Yeah. Yeah. And now they're also in Canada, and it should be going for EU approval, you know, here soon, by the way. And so, but at the time, you know, it was just these 57 global locations and about half of them here in the States. And, you know, but yeah, like Colorado was the closest place. You know, it's, you know, if you drive it, it's 12 hours. If you fly it, it's, you know, from, you know, like 2, you know, including, you know, all the taxiing back and forth. Anyways. And so, the biggest thing from leaving Houston in October 2019 and being like, okay, like, this is our next thing. Let's, like, get our main goal is to get in contact with them. We got to get my records over there, when we got to get an appointment so they can, you know, put their eyes on me, and, you know, I can sign consent and they can, you know, officially let me in. That was the first goal. And originally it was looking like, you know, it wouldn't have been till later, till November. And then we got the call that said, hey, we can get you in within the first week in November. We're like, gold, let's make it happen. We booked the tickets. Boom, I'm on a plane. You know, I get out there, we're stoked. You know, I meet with them. They're going over the, you know, the whole consent. That was just kind of like, you know, they had sent it to me a little bit of time, and like I'd kind of, you know, been told about it. I was like, I'm down. Like, you know, you know, I was the kind of guy that was like, let's get going, let's get going.
Yep.
Like, ain't no time to waste. You
Right.
know, like, yeah, I'm down, I'm in. Like, whatever it is
Did
we
you
got to do.
read during the consent? Did you read like every
38
page,
pages.
every line? You read
30,
everything.
yeah, man. I
Wow.
38, yeah, all 38 pages straight up. I,
Did they
you know,
leave you in a room by yourself, or like did they explain it to
no,
you? Or?
I had it ahead of time.
Ah, okay.
They sent it to me to review ahead of time, and then
Yeah.
so I kind of knew. And then when I met up with them, they went over it with me, and then, you know, page for page, and, you know, if I had any questions, and, you know, I had my family with me and stuff, you know, because they were my eyes and ears. You know what I'm saying? I got my, like, my mag mittens. You know what I'm saying? Meep, meep. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, and so I was like, okay, you know, this part's done, next steps. And, you know, I had to do a colonoscopy, you know, during that same visit, because I, you know, I'd come off colitis a couple of months before, and they wanted to verify I didn't have inflammation from that. You know, they were just doing all their, you know, checks and boxes and
Right.
crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And I was like, okay, you know, I was like, you know, trust me. I was like, you know, because after I came off the colitis, I ended up doing like some chemo called Abraxane, and I did 2 out of 3 cycles, you know, before going back to down from Dallas to Houston to figure out what's up. But that chemo just made me feel horrible. So I was like, man, I gotta be strong for this treatment. So I went out to Denver during that, you know, first week of November of 2019, and then did the colonoscopy. I got looked over, flew back to Dallas, and then, you know, was going back to work, and we had an appointment set up, you know, that got bumped up early, you know, for my resection with Dr. McCarter. For like the last week of November, and, you know, and I was like, all right, cool, like, you know, let's go. And I, you know, like, if you read in that book, like, I had, you know, this lymph node in my groin that was like an egg. Well, that same exact spot, it grew back again. And so that's
Wow.
exactly what they
They took
extracted.
out.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was like, it was literally like,
Wow.
I want to say like 5 or 6 centimeters, you know, square. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was this oblong looking egg, and like,
Yep.
you know, down in Houston, they had like assumed it was necrotic, but they didn't like test it to be for
Right.
sure. But that's what they took out, and so that was my 3rd surgery to the same spot, and I got this like,
Wow.
you know, flux capacitor looking scar here in my thigh with all this, you know, scar tissue and nerve damage. It's crazy. But anyways, they had plenty of tissue, you know, and so I did that surgery, and like right around that same time is when that uveitis started kicking in, and like my eyesight was like, just like, you know, my eyelashes were falling out. I couldn't
Yeah.
see. I couldn't even see well enough to put my own like eye drops in. I couldn't go back to work, you know, like I couldn't drive, like, you know. And then you know, I flew back. Our family flew back to Dallas, and I was just like hanging out at home and just like clinically declining. Like, my appetite like was non-existent. I wasn't walking around, and my knees were swelling up. If I had to go anywhere, I was getting wheelchaired around. Like, you know, the pictures, you know, if you've seen any of them with like, you know, the major vitiligo and the, you know, crazy red eye, and just, you know, me like, you know, just holding on with my family, you know, I'm just literally dying, you know what I'm saying? And then while I was, you know, was doing that, that's when we got the call, hey, your cells are growing, you know, they're going to be ready, you know, by mid-September, you know, plan for this date, you know, you got to go locally and do your baseline scans. And that's when I went and scanned on December 6th, and did a, you know, an additional CT, chest, abdomen, and pelvis, and a brain MRI. And then that's when I went in on the 10th here locally. And that's when they said, hey, now you got the brain mets and stuff. And so it was just like, oh my God, like, but you know, I was also on a palliative pack of pain meds. You know, I had really good insurance plan through my employer. I was working as a home builder, so, you know, I had PPO insurance. I also had short-term disability, long-term disability. I had the FMLA. I had like that whole package that you get when you have a really solid like benefits plan when you're a W-2 employee, you know what I'm saying, and stuff. And when you're in your 30s, a lot of folks, I mean, I remember my whole life, it was just one of those things. It was like, insurance is just in case. And I was like, man, like, I just never like wanted to, I don't, if I broke even, like, great, but like, I didn't, I never made enough money to like pay taxes, so I'd always like, I was always a W-2 employee, so I just fill everything out and I'd get a little bit of return. So I was like, all the benefits were always worth it. And then finally I needed it, and I was like, oh man, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what a lifesaver. Because if I didn't have that, like, I couldn't, no insurance would have taken me out of state, and like, but
they would have rejected this
100%. And that was the thing. And I remember, like, you'll get to this chapter, but I was literally laying in my bedroom, which is, like on this other side of this wall, while my mom was in this room, on the phone, like just crying her eyes out, like just going to freaking battle with the insurance. My son will die.
I know.
There is no, like, it's got to be done now. And it was every day. And I had like my mom, my dad, my siblings, my sister, my brother, they were coming in shifts and hanging out with me. And I would literally either just be laying in my bed or laying on my couch and, just be chilling, having the TV on. They'd show up like first thing in the morning and leave late at the evening. And then, so I had somebody, there and everything. But I was never married, never had kids, and so, I was so grateful that like I had this care team that was taking shifts and, going to battle on my behalf. But,
but with the PPO, what was the issue that your mom was arguing about? Just like paying for the scans and the radiology?
Yeah, it was the insurance to approve the SRS treatments, for the occipital lobe. And the thing was, it was like, we had to have it approved, like immediately. And
to
the
qualify,
insurance,
right? To qualify.
Well, because to qualify to get the mask made, to get the treatments, because we had to meet that deadline to get the treatment and then scan no later than Christmas Eve. And that's why I always tell people I did 5 sessions in 4 days, because on the 4th day, they gave me a double dose. Like, but, I remember, like, at the time we got approved, it was like, well, 4 days, is better than no days.
This is
it's
crazy,
not 5.
because Chris and Biotech Scanner, I own research clinics. Like, I know how hard it is, some of these inclusion exclusion criteria, to find the right patient. Like, they don't just fall out of the sky. They are sometimes 9 out of 10 don't qualify. When you get that one that was hard to get, you do whatever it takes. Like, we pay for all their stuff. You need to scan and go get it. We pay for it. It's crazy to me how valuable, like, the data from you is for these companies, but then they just leave you on your own to figure things out. Like, it's crazy how that happens.
Yeah. I remember we were asking about, like, screw insurance. What if we just had the cash? Let's say we were millionaires, billionaires, whatever. Could we do it? And they were like, no, that's, it's too much HIPAA and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was like, what?
Yeah. I was like,
I was blown away.
I mean, that's very interesting to me, Chris, because you were saying, I don't have time to wait for approval. Can I just pay with my cash? And they said no.
Yep.
What?
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened.
Brother, I die with money.
This exact point of this topic, I'm going to be expressing very loudly next week when I'm in Manhattan, because I feel extremely passionate about it, because it's.
But then some places do pay for it, right? Like, some places do have NIH, as long as it's part of a study. I think they call it research as a care option, or they have different terms for this kind of stuff.
But it's weird, because, like, if a patient doesn't know that it's an option and someone doesn't bring it up to them, then depending on who you're talking to, like, they might just, they just might let it go. And, like, if a patient, doesn't know it's an option, even ask, then, it's not a choice, it's a lack of options. You know what I'm saying? Like,
One thing I would say to this, Chris, is one, this TIL trial is like the first, privately sponsored trial in TIL. And so everything was so primitive, so new, even their, manufacturing plant, it wasn't built then.
They were navigating as they had to go. So, I mean, I got to give them credit because I know they're very heavily regulated and, a lot of eyes watching. And so like they're setting the standard. So like, I don't blame them at all. Like I got a lot of respect because I'm like, they made history with this.
Yeah, I would
breast cancer patients in the future, lung cancer patients in the future, like all of them, like people from now on, like these, like they'll look at cancer as, hey, these are curative things. You don't have to do multiple things multiple times and like, deplete your quality of life. You can do this one treatment one time, and if it doesn't work, they ain't gonna go try all that other stuff. But you got to get to it sooner than later. Like I'm just saying, like
time out right there, Chris. To the Dragon family watching and Dan's audience watching, those are the words from a patient, not from an investor. You hear what he was saying? That patients should have the opportunity to get treated with Amtagvi sooner. Chris got beat up. If you read the book, and you should read the book, you will see how a person get knocked down. He got back and get knocked down. He got accepted into the trial, and everything's ready to go. Freaking brain tumor arrived. Oh, and then guess what? Having to get insurance approved for radiation. I mean, but the good thing is now, Chris was saying the lung cancer patient, endometrial cancer patient, the frontline patient for melanoma, frontline for lung cancer. The great thing is what Chris went through is part of the learning experience of Iovance, but now they have all of that infrastructure built. So these patients now, or volunteers or whatever, they are so spoiled now compared to what Chris went through, right? And they have all of these over 80 authorized treatment centers they can go to. They have all of these community hospitals, these research institutions they could go to. But Chris has to go through all of that. And what I love about what Chris is doing, he's so passionate about that this is a life-saving treatment. Don't save it until the end. Okay, and that's what I'm saying to you, that my science background, my pharmaceutical experience tells me that Iovance will be the leader in solid cancers. They're trying to do things that big pharma are afraid to go into. That's why they go into CAR T, because it is easier. But unfortunately, CAR T only addresses blood cancer, what makes up only 9 to 10% of all cancer. Iovance is doing things that big pharma is afraid to do. It doesn't matter if we invest in Iovance or not. We should be rooting as hard as we can for Iovance to succeed, so it could help patients like Chris and patients who actually all over the world right now who are in the non-small cell lung cancer, endometrial cancer, the frontline melanoma, and frontline lung cancer. We should be rooting for this company regardless if we invested in it or not. And I'm so thankful that Chris is so passionate. He is so busy. That's why I jumped on here as soon as I heard that it's available, because he goes everywhere and he shares his story. And a lot of times he's doing it with his own money because he's passionate about it. That's why Chris doesn't tell me to do this, but please go out there, support him. Find this book, $12.
Get the
man.
book.
He didn't tell me to tell you this. He didn't. Okay. But what he's doing deserves our support. Okay, but for people out there bashing Iovans when things don't go their way on a trade, are you kidding me? Listen to this guy. Listen to him. What this company has done for him. But you know what, MTACV? Is only the beginning. Is only the beginning. It's the very first indication. You got frontline melanoma coming. You got second line non-small cell. You got frontline non-small cell. You got second line endometrial. You got second and a frontline endometrial. And then guess what? The new generation TIL are coming. The PD-1 inactivated TIL, IOV 4001, the IO12 tether, TIL that is showing 6 times the cancer killing power without IO2. And IO2 sucks,
That's
by the way.
crazy.
But
We let this man cook. Biotech Scanner,
Yo,
the most knowledgeable guy on Iovance in history.
real quick, I got to mention this because I connected with the patient this week that reached out to me on a DM, and she's doing commercial TIL, and where the location she's doing it at, she doesn't have to spend the time in the hospital for her chemo lymphodepletion. In fact, the sponsor is paying for her hotel, and she can do it outpatient. And I was like, damn, that's like half the time in the hospital compared to what I had to do, and they're paying for it. And I was like, so I was like, that's huge. Like she's getting to it sooner than later. She's in a healthier spot. I was like,
there's people out there
looking
fighting
really
for
good.
patients, man.
Yeah,
there's people fighting. There's concierge services. Shout out to Scout Clinical. They're the one. They'll fly patients from Europe to the US, anywhere in the world.
That is a huge service. You know what I'm saying?
Awesome.
100%. Like, that's needed, that's wanted, that's totally appreciated. Like,
And the sponsors want to pay for it. It's the regulatory tape that they are afraid of. It's not the money. Even a small market cap like Iovance, it's not the money to them. It's all that regulatory burden that is the reason for them to be cautious. But there are services now. Scout's one of them. They're not a sponsor of this podcast, but we use them. Sometimes we have to drive our patients from Yuma to Phoenix, and so there's concierge services.
The another thing I want to add to, I read the article today, Chris and Dan. The cellular cancer therapy, cellular and immunotherapy, it's a $370 billion market. Okay, now think about this. Iovance is in the market of where 90% of the cancer is.
That's what I'm saying.
And they have a treatment. They have a freaking monopoly.
One-time treatment. They own the patent.
One and done. One and done.
One and done,
These
baby.
guys, this guy's favorite, the guy who's in charge of CBER,
he loves one and done.
Love one and done. This administration's all for that. We do have a question, Chris. I mean, there's so many ways we can go with this interview. It's insane. But Elvis says, seems like Gavi one-time treatment was easier compared to all the frontline treatments they put him through. Can you compare the experience?
You know what? I can't. So you got to look at it like this, like all of the frontline things that I had to do, which gave me all of my temporary and like permanent side effects, which I still have PTSD over, you know what I'm saying? Meaning my thyroid went out immediately. I got uveitis, which turned to full out cataracts, which I eventually had to have cataract surgery, so my eyesight went out. All my melanocytes completely disappeared. I used to have dark brown hair and everything, so I got to make sure I'm totally covered up, or I just fry if I'm not safe when it's the sun's out. I have a lot of chronic pain and fatigue, so it's this roller coaster of trial and error of trying to figure out my energy levels and everything. But the all of these PD-1, CTLA-4s, combinations and chemos and radiation, blah 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 blah, that I did like just beat me up so supremely bad. And if I was been told like from day one when I was diagnosed in the middle of July of 2018 and said, hey, there's this one-time treatment, like, you gotta wait till, we can prove that whatever we try first doesn't work. But as soon as that happens, you can do this. And then, you might have to spend, from the time, total, like maybe about a month, 6 weeks or whatever, like, X amount of time in the hospital. But, it's the game plan is I would have been like, yeah, sign me up. Let me know as soon as like I'm game to go. Let's do it. And the thing is I didn't find this out until I really started looking into it. But I literally qualified to do what I did, in January, / February of 2019. I wasn't told about it until I
You
ran
would have
out of
probably
options.
qualified. You would have qualified easier.
I did.
You would have qualified earlier because of the lack of the brain metastases, most likely. Like you wouldn't have even had that issue.
But they were just, like I said, like at the time, like the place where I was at, like they had their own trials, but their cell growth process was twice as long. And so I didn't. My disease was so aggressive. There was no time to like wait for that process. It was like because I was scanning at minimum like every 6 weeks. Like I would go back and forth from Dallas to Houston for those scans and the main follow-ups, but whatever systemic treatment that they would suggest down in Houston, I could do in Dallas, so I wasn't having to do that. But the main follow-ups, it was like, we're down there. So, but yeah, I literally qualified to do it about 9 months before it's brought, 9 to 10 months before it's brought to my attention that, oh, hey, by the way, like, because if I would have known, I would have been like, hey, can I shift
that
gears?
Person that brought it up, that was from that Facebook group. Somebody randomly made a post, or how?
No, like, so like, they had mentioned it and, we had asked about it and, they were too concerned about the metastasis that was near the neoplasm by my kidney. And, we had to get like my kidney and the neoplasm, like metastasis, like under control. And then like the major spots in my lungs. And so the rebuttal to like, hey, what about TIL? They're like, well, like, we gotta, focus on this first. And we had asked about like, hey, what about this, this lymph node that grew back that looked like an egg, like in my groin? And they were like, no, it's necrotic. And I'm like, well, you didn't like do an additional biopsy to test it that it was it was necrotic tissue. And it turns out that that's the actual thing that saved my life. And I talked to a lot of patients, and it turns out that lymph nodes, for the most part, tend to be like the best tumors to resect. When you go to get one that has a suggested chance for bacteria to grow like on other organs, that they don't grow as well as if you get them from the nodes.
Yeah, it is. What I'm so impressed about, and I heard your story, and of course Bill's story, like the person who you interviewed, and others, like Tony English is the other one. Y'all have something similar, is that these cancer cells are spreading to the brain, liver, lungs, kidney, whatever else. And then lo and behold, when Amtavi gets in there, when your T cells get injected in there with the help of IL-2 getting activated, it doesn't matter where the cancer is. It just goes and wipe it out. Brain, liver,
breaking the blood-brain barrier thing.
Yeah.
Like,
it doesn't care.
A lot of success stories with that, with Amtavi.
It is crazy. And that's
a lot of success stories, man.
Yeah, and that is why CAR T could never match TIL, because CAR T is basically monoclonal. It does one thing. It's a one-trick pony. Hey, go find this cancer with this signal, with this antigen. With TIL, just go in there. You saw it. We extracted you from it. You know the signal. You don't need to be trained, and go in there and kill it. And that's why. And an amazing thing about TIL is, Chris, is that the TIL that extracted from from you, Iovan's scientists, they don't know which one's gonna be better fighter. So what they do is they harvest just billions and billions of every single type, because this random type could be killing that one, whereas this one doesn't. So you need a whole army, and that's what CAR T cannot do.
Aren't they working, like, from my understanding, they're working on CAR T for solid tumor, and they're working on, you know, solid TIL for hematologic cancer. So I know there's a cross barrier going on right now, but it's very
Yes.
early stages
Yeah.
and stuff, you
And-
know, but at some point in the future, there'll definitely be a cross pollination. I can see.
Yeah.
You know,
And if you look on, by the way, if y'all look on the Iovan's website, there is
in the pipeline, right?
in the pipeline TIL for it's IOV
It's like a
2001.
phase 1 or something, I think.
Yeah,
or,
IOV 2001
yeah.
for blood cancer. Okay, with in conjunction with IO2, just like what Chris got. So that's going to be pretty exciting. But yeah, it's
Sharing the screen right now. So here is the pipeline for
Yeah.
IOV.
IOV 2001.
Yeah, it should be further down the line there.
The last one, actually. It should be the last one.
TL treatment
You know,
regimen.
the cool thing about their pipeline is it covers so much ground. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And like, I literally, like, I connect with, like I said, like, things from people that have heard of and things that they haven't heard of. Like, nobody's heard of mucosal melanoma, but they've heard of breast cancer, lung cancer, you know, colon cancer, cervical, so on. And like, I've I created this group on Facebook, you know, just and I called it like TILs, because it wasn't specific to a disease, it was specific to a treatment. So it was like,
Right.
whether you had a solid tumor for something else, and there's a lot of patients that I think there is it the 4001.
Yep.
That's just like, you know, you can get into, like, if you have a solid tumor and you meet this criteria, you can get into it, you know. And so, like, that's,
It's easier to qualify, right, for those ones.
I think so, yeah. And so, but there's the Q&A from patient to patient about, like, you know, hey, what was it like for you, and this and that, like, you know, like, it's the
they're calling it
connection.
the empowered patient movement. Like, since I remember in our industry, there's been pushing this engaged patient, informed patient. They call it the e-patient, empowered patient, the people who do their own research. The researchers used to be worried about social media because they didn't want you, if there was a placebo, they didn't want you comparing your results to another patient, and then, like,
Yeah.
you guys break the blind, right? That was like their
Yeah.
biggest fear back in the day. But there's
that's
no way to
unless
avoid
they-
that.
Yeah, they can't control that anymore. That's all
No.
shifting.
They
That's all
can't.
shifting.
Yep. And then I have talked to a research oncologist, and he goes to all of these oncology conferences, right? SITC, ASCO,
ASCO, yeah.
Oh, and
That's a
these
cool one.
oncologists, some of them are involved in these trials, and they would be bragging like, "Oh my gosh, I got somebody on this TIL, and they did it awesome," you know, stuff like that. There's no way that they could control everything, you know.
Well, and that's the thing, is there's so many between COIs, NDAs, and HIPAA, and like what was and what is now. Like, it's totally
And to
different than it
find,
was.
imagine you've just been diagnosed, right? And you somehow come across Chris White's profile, because you're gonna start Googling this stuff. You know, you talk about it in your book.
That's 100% my intent, because I literally asked when I was signing my consent, like, hey, is there other mucosal melanoma patients that have done TIL that you can connect me with? And they were like,
we can't,
no.
because you're gonna
Like, yeah,
talk, and maybe
exactly.
it will
They
break the
said
blind.
one, like, you know, yeah, they didn't give an explanation. They just said no. And it wasn't until years later I figured out, I'm like, okay, well, this is probably why they said no. But
Yeah.
Well, at
that was
least it was, at least the study you were in was open label. I mean, because it's,
Yeah.
you know,
But that
it's
was my
autologous.
whole
You can't
goal,
blind
because
it.
I wanted to make sure that if someone, you know, either Googled my disease or Googled the treatment, that there would be enough information out there to where they could be like, okay. And that's what I
Yeah,
tell people. I'm
yeah.
like, if you Google Chris White and TIL, or Chris White and mucosal melanoma, you'll have pages of, you know, just,
Yep.
you know, I'm
Yeah.
reconstructing my main website right now, but I've done like almost 24 guest blogs.
You get hit up like frequently by newly diagnosed people.
Yeah, through different platforms, and it's kind of hard to keep up with, but coming up with a frequently asked questions chart to be like, one
That's
of the
gotta be
patients.
emotionally draining as
It
fuck,
is
dude. Like,
one of the people I've did on TIL Talks, and her name's Katie Doble, and she had ocular melanoma, and she was diagnosed before me, but did TIL after me. But we connected, and anyways, one of the things that stuck with me when I talked with her was that for like your own mental health as a patient, when you're trying to be an advocate and help support people, is to know your boundaries and to set your limits. And it's basically like, if you have my exact same diagnosis, and you're doing this, then I can help you, and but if you're just like asking about it, it's like I can't keep up with all that for my own mental health, because
Right.
like it's just
Yeah.
too wide of a range, and like
Right.
not everybody makes it, and blah blah blah. So what worked for me might not work for you. It depends on your
Right.
scenario, your situation. And so it's like, look, like if you've followed all of my content, if you've read all of my stuff and this and that, and then you line up all these boxes and you still have questions, yeah, I'll connect with you. You know what I'm saying? But like, there's just only so much bandwidth, to be able to keep up with it. And I feel bad, you know what I'm saying? Because like, I want to be able to support people full time, you know what I'm saying? But like, man, like I myself went BK in the beginning of this year. I'm just trying to not be homeless, you know what I mean? Like, I have a purpose and a meaning now, but I'm like, man, like, everything what I'm doing now is like a complete 180 from the Chris White that, was pre-cancer. And even within the first couple of years after getting out of the trial, like, I thought like when I got out of the hospital, in January 2020, that I could just resume life and go back to like, what it was, and everything would be all good. I had no clue what was about to happen, because the dust hadn't even settled like on the storm yet. And like, and then COVID hit, and it was like all I wanted to do was be around people, and I wasn't allowed to be around anybody, and everybody went crazy. It was nuts. I was like, man, like I'm just glad to be alive, and like the whole world's like doing this, and I'm like, man, like it was a real dark time in my life. I need to try to get a second book out to be like, T2
the
the
mental health
aftermath.
aspects.
Yeah, the
Yeah, the
T2 the
mental health.
aftermath. You know what I'm saying? Like that's basically what I think I'm gonna title it. You know what I'm saying? Like
What?
the
Let me
Jedi John Connor. You know what I mean? Like,
let me ask you
Yeah.
what what type of expectations did you have for this treatment? And and after your scans, your net now, um, how surprised were you when you realized, oh my God, I'm cured?
you
What
know,
type of
it was
expectations
nuts,
you have?
because like you envision this unimaginable goal that like you literally like you're the one in a million. And like I've referenced this so many times. I talk about the Dumb and Dumber Jim Carrey quote, and he was like
Yep.
talking about like, do I got a chance? And I shit you not, I swear to God, it was like they didn't say like, Chris, you have like 0% chance or 100% gonna die. And was like, well, it's not looking good, but it's very slim. And I was like, well, as long as there's a chance, it's got to be it. And then when I finally like at that my first follow up, when I got that 50 to 60% reduction after 6 weeks, I was like, oh my God, because I was just hoping just to get the chance to just get the day zero and get my infusion. And
Yeah.
I was just like, that's what so many people just, like, if you can get to day zero and get your infusion, like that means that like now you have your new army. And then,
It sounded like that was half the battle there, was
it
just
literally,
getting
yeah,
qualified for the study.
100%. You got to get it's one step at a time and one day at a time. And then you get to that
Mhm.
point and you're like, okay, cool. I made it to this point. Now we got to fight this. And then now the next battle is this. And,
And
so
these
it's like,
insurance companies don't give a shit if you get in the study or not, man.
no, man, dude, it's all about like, I don't know, how billable of a patient are you? You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
that's why subscription and prescription sounds so the same, because, it's recurring. You know what I mean? Like if you have, if you do something and you don't need to go back as a recurring customer, like, you know, That's just right there. So when I literally, it was like at the 9th or 10th month mark during 2020 when they were like, hey, we think you have a, complete metabolic response. I want you to do a PET scan to see if you have any uptake. I was like, oh my God, like, are you for real? Because, it was kind of this back and forth, and like, they're like, hey, like what's showing up on a CT looks like it's calcified and necrotic, and that's what it's showing up. But if we do a PET scan, if there's actually any uptake, it'll show. And when I did
Well,
that,
that's related to this question. How long before he started to feel better after the treatment?
Well, it was wild because I had no choice but to go back to work. I got out of the hospital on January 20th of 2020, and I flew back to Dallas like on January 30th. But I had to go back to work by May 1st of 2020. I was going to have to cover my insurance, and I closed on a house. I was single. And even though I qualified for disability, I didn't, the disability wouldn't cover my expenses. And if I were to get an additional job, it would revoke my disability. So I had no choice but to go back to work full time. So I had to get my eyes fixed with cataract surgery and relearn how to drive, and went back to work during COVID. And I was back at work on May 1st of 2020. And, I was moving around. I was staying busy, like, in a sense. I had a roller coaster of physical and mental health issues and this and that. And, and then, but it was by that September scan that they said, hey, we think you have a CMR. So in October of 2020, I did a PET, and on that PET, I just had everything had disappeared 100% except for this little bitty faint spot like on my chest. And so, I had my, December, CTs, but in January 2021, I did a PET to follow up on the October of 2020 PET, and that spot had disappeared. And so, since then, it was just like,
that
it's
is
100. Now it's 100% confirmed. You're like, you have zero traces, whatever's showing up on a CT on those slices is confirmed to be calcified and necrotic, and those are continuing to shrink. And so, but there's, zero uptake on any PETs. And then even during the summer of 2021, they thought they saw a spot like in my nodes or something. So I did another PET, nothing lit up, and I finished my 60-month consent in August of 2024. And at that consent, along with my, CT chest, abdomen, pelvis, CT head and neck, brain MRI, I did a PET CT, still nothing lit up. And then
24. So that was for the 5-year overall survival.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So I was literally the very last patient to be dosed for the trial, and I was the very last patient to be followed up with. That would have been towards that data.
Last patient in.
And then
let me put that in perspective for the audience. Okay. Chris had mucosal melanoma, an extremely rare and difficult to treat melanoma, not just a random type, not just the normal type. Okay. All right. He's been beat up by probably 20 rounds of treatments. All right. So, I mean, after all of that, and in the most difficult melanoma type, he got a complete metabolic response, or CR in FDA terms. Okay, so Amtagvi didn't just beat melanoma; it beats a very rare type. Okay, now does Amtagvi do that for every patient gets on Amtagvi? No, that's why the ORR is only 31%. That's how smart cancer is. And you cannot take what Amtagvi does for granted, because it is still a freaking bad dude. Okay. So yeah, I mean, Chris is a success story, but the other 70% didn't make it. And that's what we cannot take what Amtagvi does for granted. And again, when investing in a pharmaceutical company or biotech company, the very first thing, it has to be the quality of the product. And when you have a quality product like Amtagvi, which cannot be changed. You don't change the product after you get FDA approved. You don't change that. You can change manufacturing. You can change sales marketing strategy. You can change CEO, CFO, make things better, improving sales. But if you don't have the good drug to begin with, you're screwed.
Straight up.
We are
That's
not screwed. We
that's
have
100.
best in class, the only one in class, a monopoly. And it's just the beginning. And Chris, I just want to say, we're probably going to wrap things up, but man, thank you so much. I'm rooting for you every day because I know the battle is still not over, brother. Okay, we don't take anything for granted. All right, but I'm so thankful that you're using your time, and you said your bonus time, right?
Straight.
For the
Yeah,
rest
it's
of
a
the time on
second
Earth,
life for me. Go
yeah,
look at the previous what I used to look like, and both physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it. I'm a whole
yeah.
nother person. I was rebirthed from TIL. Like literally
That is
not
amazing.
expected to live, like even everybody I'd spoken to, doctors, friends, family, whoever, like, yeah, they, I wasn't supposed to make it, but I
Yeah,
did, and it worked. And I'm like, man, like this is now, like in 20 years from now, people will be looking back at cancer and be like, oh yeah, like, whatever, like, they got TIL for that, just like I remember, when I was like a kid, like, I'm
yeah,
43, and then, born in 82. And I remember, like, growing up, like they were like, there was a lot of campaigns about AIDS and stuff, and it was like, don't want to get that because it's not treatable. No, like nowadays, like, man, Magic Johnson, like,
yep,
Charlie
yep,
Yeah.
Sheen, like, man, like
yeah.
that's totally treatable. You know what I'm
It
saying? Like
is.
they got you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how that's how I see, cancer is gonna be one day because it's things
Yep,
like TIL.
yep.
You know what I mean?
And we're
Like
gonna look back at
these are
things like
curative
chemo.
treatments. Yeah,
We're
chemo will
gonna
be
look
like,
back at things like chemo, and be like, how the hell
they're
did
like,
you
why
Yeah.
were
ever
we
Why did we
doing
work through?
that?
do that?
Bullshit. Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah. Uh-uh.
I
So speaking of some of those,
Uh-uh.
so we got a question here from Saul. We're gonna wrap up soon, but like, there's so many things we need to discuss still. But can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the IL-2 Proleukin treatment? People seem to
Oh
be like
yeah,
a little bit
dude.
concerned about this or side
Yeah.
effects.
That's why I'm such an advocate for getting to do TIL sooner than later, because the healthier you are going into doing TIL, the
Yep.
better you are to,
to deal with
combat
that.
this, because the IL-2 is very intense. I'm not going to lie. Like,
Yep.
it is,
Yep.
it the main side effect is what they call rigors. And what rigors is it gives you, you have convulsions, you're, uncontrollably like shaking, and while you're doing so, like it's like you're working out but you're not like wanting to, and you're exhausting like your entire system. You're running a fever but you feel like you're freezing, and it's very painful. You get extremely thirsty. I was drinking mad amounts of water. You wanted heated blankets. I tell people, I'm like, buy a heated blanket, like have some a handful of those 32-ounce, like, bottles of water, have somebody there can, with the long straws that can help feed it to you. You know what I'm saying? But like essentially what happens when you do those IL-2 things, like it takes like about 5 to 10 minutes for it to kick in, and it like gradually kicks in. And I didn't know this at the first one, but they were like, oh, we can give you pain meds for that. I'm like, what the hell didn't you tell me that? And so I was like, all right, well, have it ready. And so I was able to figure out, I'm like, okay, well, the rigors are going to kick in within about give or take 5 or so minutes. So right around that same time, have that, because they can, it'll last about 30 minutes. So it's like, give me that first dose of whatever the Demerol or morphine, or I can't remember what it was called, but anyways, give me whatever it was, and sit that in, and then I would play music, and then just kind of like, ride that high, and then like, as soon as they could give me the second one, give me that. And I would just continue to try to pretend like I was at a concert and like try to block it out of my
Wow.
mind or something.
But how
My
are we
dad called
talking
it,
like minutes or 20 minutes or
it's
what's
about
the
30
period?
minutes. Like
30
I
minutes.
actually put a YouTube video up on it, and my dad called it Riger's rap because I would have like Method Man, you know, in the background, or like Busta Rhymes and Eminem.
That explains the
and,
Wu-Tang hat.
dude. Straight up, bro. I've been a Wu-Tang fan my whole life, dude.
So
Like,
Yep.
let me ask you.
I got a picture of me and you, God, dude. Like,
Oh wow.
yeah, I gotta post
I
that. Like,
bomb
that's what me and the brown hair.
atomically. I bomb atomically.
Socrates' philosophies and hypotheses can't define what I be dropped these mockeries, lyrically
Mockeries.
perform armed robbery, flee with the lottery, possibly this splatter. Anyways, man,
That's-
Man,
I
Thank
got
you, Sal,
mixtapes for
for that
days,
question,
dude.
man.
thank God you're here, man. You know,
Yeah.
I think
Thank you for having me, man.
this
Shit.
I think this story gets lost in both the investment side, for sure the investment side.
Yep.
And then even in what I do, like we run clinics. We don't deal with life and death things necessarily. I mean, we have some cardiovascular disease, but oncology really brings you down to like ground zero. Like this is literally life or death. Or sometimes we don't even concern with life. We're just concerned with quality of life extension.
That's exactly why
Like
I'm so passionate about it, because it's not
Mm.
only preservation of life, but quality of life, dude.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Chris. This question, and I've always wanted to ask because one of the things that people sometimes say, "Oh, but the treatment with IL-2 is so tough." Okay, so let me ask you this: if you have 10 opportunities to go back to that moment when you ran out of options, all right? And if you have 10 of those opportunities, knowing what IL-2 is going to put you through, how many times out of 10 would you still choose Amtagvi treatment?
Shit, 12 out of 10. I would have trained like
12 out of
Rocky.
10.
That
I would have trained like I was Rocky, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
What if though? And this is morbid, but you would be one of the 7 of 10 that didn't, overall. Would you still do it due to the quality of
Yeah.
life?
Like, at least I wasn't like, going out for lack of effort. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I would have
Yeah.
still like, is my better chances, because
Wow.
you can do all the other, things that are provided to you, and they may or may not work, but you still have that fear of like, oh, it's going to come back. I have zero thoughts of it lurking, like, oh, it's coming back. I could go get hit by a bus or go get some other kind of cancer, but I am not worried about mucosal melanoma coming back.
that is
Wow.
amazing, man.
And it's
Well,
not like the
that's-
other treatments are walks in the park either. Like,
Yeah.
you
Well, I mean, the
Well, I've now
immunotherapy
hit
he
that
went
benchmark.
through, the first line therapy that Chris went through, he's still living with the side effects.
yeah, it's yeah.
So
yeah.
what kind of let me ask you this, Chris. What kind of side effects or ongoing side effects do you have with IO2 now? None.
None of it, dude. I literally, like, anything that was related to everything I had to do for TIL has no. I don't have any permanent side effects from it. All of my, current side effects I'm dealing with was from everything that I did before TIL.
Exactly.
So for this to become more mainstream, first of all, it has to go through more trials, but it becomes an educational thing, and it becomes a argument then about money and
Yep.
finances, and it's
100%.
impossible to have this conversation without discussing pharmacy benefit managers and
DVMs, baby.
payers and all that nonsense, right? So
I've
we got a lot of
lied
work
on the
ahead
hill
of
multiple
us.
times.
We got a
Yeah.
lot of work ahead of us, but the progress is here. The lack of progress is not on the science side, right? It's on the economic side of the whole
well,
It's the
equation.
money thing. I've asked about it. They, the thing is like they need IRBs, and those
Yeah.
cost money.
Yeah,
And
not so much though, but yeah, the ethics
But yeah.
committees for sure.
like,
well, the patient now, Chris and Dan, and I post about it today or yesterday too. And you may know about this, Chris, that Iovan's partner with InspiroGene.
yeah, I saw that.
They would do everything that your mom had to do.
Yeah.
You didn't
Now
have to deal with any of that. Okay?
we're doing it in 2019. But
Yeah,
they are now.
Gene will take all of that logistic. We'll
Yeah,
try
that's a huge difference for a patient, man. That's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, that takes a lot of burden off a patient.
Yes.
That's like night
Yeah.
and day,
That's
bro.
why I'm saying it's a game changer.
Serious.
You know,
It's huge.
so I don't make
Huge.
things up. Trying to family, I don't make things up. I just tell you what I know from my experience in pharmaceutical industry and my research. You know, and then what's funny is after I posted on Inspire Gene the day before, the next morning, I got an inbox on Newswire that came across about the $370 billion cellular therapy in cancer, and it highlighted Iovance and the partnership with InspiroGene by
I
McKesson.
saw that. I saw that one today.
Yeah.
That
Isn't
is
McKesson
crazy.
out of Dallas or no?
Irving, yes, 30
Irving.
minutes.
Yeah, that's right. All right.
30
Okay.
minutes from both of us.
Yeah. They're like in the middle.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wait, you're
I'm
in
familiar.
Plano, and you're where are you at?
I live in north of McKinney.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Melissa.
Yeah.
Biotech's in Fort Worth area.
Yep.
Fort Worth, yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
But
Melissa, and it's growing.
I lived in the Collin County area since 1996, though. You know, like Plano, Frisco, McKinney.
Nice area, though.
I lived in Little Elm for a little bit. Like I went to UNT for a year. I got my associates from Collin County. I got my bachelor's from UTD. You
Nice.
know, but I kind of just fluctuated around this kind of area, and all of my siblings and parents, they all live within the Collin County area. We're all within the same
And now the
cities.
closest Tavi treatment center to Dallas,
Dallas
actually is
Baylor.
Dallas. Yeah,
It's
Baylor.
Dallas Baylor.
Yep.
Yeah. And in fact, I did a thing for Swim Across America a few weeks back, almost a month ago, and the beneficiary for it this year was for Dallas Baylor. And I remember highlighting that, because they're doing preemptive tests, for oncology and everything, but they're literally like the only ATC center within the DFW Metroplex, from my knowledge. Otherwise you got to go to Houston or elsewhere.
Yeah, and by the way, if Iovance made Baylor an ATC, Baylor is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Okay.
yeah, they're great, dude.
Baylor Scottish and White, to be exact, because of the merger. But they are amazing.
Do you guys know?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if, since this is approved already for mucosal melanoma, right? For if somebody were diagnosed and let's say they watched this video, or they somehow got lucky and found out about this, Gavi research centers or treatment centers, is there a process, like they have to have failed frontline first, right? But just once, once.
So they it's for unresectable metastatic melanoma. So and as a second line of treatment, but if they have the BRAF gene, they have to have done a BRAF. Yeah, if they're BRAF positive, they would have had to done a BRAF specific treatment. But like me, I was wild type, so I had no c-kit, I had no NRAS, I had no BRAF. The only thing I had was MDM2 amplification and a CDK4 mutation or something like that. But those are the only two things, and so that's why I ended up doing a little bit of Keytruda, and went down some of the immunotherapy paths. And
but let's say you meet those criteria,
if you don't
right?
have the BRAF gene, and all you have to do is just fail a PD-1, and then and then you can go boom to it. So but you have to have one tumor to resect and one tumor to monitor of like 1.5 centimeters a piece or something like that.
So let's say your oncologist not familiar, but you find it yourself. You go, your insurance has to cover it at that point, right? Or you still might run into issues.
If your oncologist doesn't know, then you go, hey, well, there's this treatment out here. Please reach out to this place and give me a referral, because I qualify. But they should know, and if they don't, that it's that's kind of sad, but
Well,
they
the more
should.
months go by, they will start to know soon.
They should
Sooner
be.
than
Yeah,
later.
they should know.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and again, when you launch a first ever in the history of TIL,
Takes a
you
while for
have to
people to
give
get,
the company
yeah.
some time to grow.
No, yeah, it takes a minute for everybody to kind of
Yeah,
absorb. There's so much stuff going on everywhere. Like
yeah,
everybody can't keep up with everything all at the same
No,
time. Like
no.
right,
they only
right.
got so much bandwidth. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like depending on whether
So,
you're in an educational system, a private system, or wherever
yeah,
you're at, they
yeah.
only know what they know unless,
Well,
somebody's
this by far
educated
seems
them
the
about it.
most like dignity, patient giving dignity treatment that I've heard of on oncology. I mean, I've monitored oncology. I've never worked at the site, but I've been on the other side, and yeah, they go through rounds of chemo, I mean, rounds. I've seen people on like their 50th cycle.
Yeah.
Like when I've monitored breast cancer, there's like
And they can keep it
it never
stable for a
ending.
long time. And,
Yeah,
some people are
yeah,
cool with that. You know what I mean? They could be like,
yeah,
well, like it's not getting worse, but it's not getting better, but everything's cool for now. And some people are cool
yeah,
with that, and it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
everybody's got a different scenario and situation, but
But eventually, it catches up.
You
yeah,
know,
Eventually.
if they know that there's an end game,
Hmm.
that like, it's like, hey, this could be a possible end game,
so
but if they're not being approached with it, then got to ask about it.
so
Yeah.
guys, think about this real quick, Dan and Chris, and the audience watching. Every drug, from over the counter to prescription drug, okay, has what's called a duration of action. How long is the drug gonna work? How long is the drug gonna remain in your body? Do you know how long Amtagvi remains in the body? How
Forever.
long does
For
it work?
life.
Forever. The duration action is from now until
You die. Yeah.
whenever.
Till you
Chris, are
expire
they
from
still
this planet.
are they still studying you? Like, do you still go check once every
I
5 years or something, or they send you a survey or anything?
No, so I came off consent in
Yeah.
August of last year, and then I
Ah,
had
okay,
another
okay.
follow-up appointment last November, and then as of 2025, like I've just been following up like with my local place, and it's
Okay.
only suggested go like twice a year. So I had some scar tissue, from my brain deal. So like I had a MRI in March, but I did CTs in July, and I'll be going back in like December, so but
Mm-hmm.
it should
Okay.
be the same as it has been.
Well,
I'm
Chris
not too
Yeah.
worried.
definitely helps with the statistics, right?
Yeah.
The DOR.
Yeah, there's no official long-term like follow-up, like,
Yeah.
Right.
on my
Right.
statistics, but
But that's
But
I
the
crazy.
let people know.
duration of action, or the
Yeah.
duration, what did you call it? Biotech duration
Well, duration of response.
of response. There you go.
And so now
DOR.
with him, it's way more than 5 years now. You
Well,
know?
they have those studies for CAR T patients, that
They
are
do.
like 10-year plus, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But they don't
They'll
necessarily
probably
like,
start doing these.
Yeah.
Iovance is just getting started.
they,
I mean,
well,
market cap's pretty low, so they got to pay
they've,
for this somehow.
they've been piggybacking off of like the NIH studies and
Yeah. Yeah.
what came
Yeah.
before them with Lion and everything. That's how a lot of the cats
Yeah.
that I've talked with, on
Yeah.
my pod, what I'm saying, like, like Bill Heyman, what I'm saying, he was like the
Yeah.
first NIH patient, from
Oof.
Lion,
That's
which became
amazing.
his story is amazing, dude.
Well, it's
Yeah.
only a matter of time, the way I see it, before a big pharma takes this and starts doing all that stuff on
Some
their own.
point, yeah. I mean,
I
I don't
just
know.
don't.
I own zero stocks in anything, so like I could,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could only be so fortunate to be able to afford to invest in stocks. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
like make sure I'm not homeless.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
Yeah. We gotta figure out a way for the patient
I'm trying to book my
advocacy, because
calendar.
there's a
Yeah.
way for patient advocates to have a role that I think, and I talked to you about this. That there's something there, but I think going to the conferences and things like that, and
Yeah.
having the right conversations, and
Yeah,
I know some people, maybe we can expedite some stuff or get some stuff started, but
that
I'm
would be
happy to try to help with that.
Well, we can
I'm
do our
grateful
part.
for
Find
any
books,
of it and all of it, or
Yeah, for now, everyone
I'm
buy the
here.
book. Everyone that works in this industry, everyone that invests in this industry, you got to read this book. But especially for my clinical researchers, you guys need to read this to understand everything from the discovery process of the trial too. And I'm only on chapter 4 because I have a newborn who doesn't let
Chris,
me read much.
one of my followers on Twitter, he bought your book and he's in Switzerland.
I think he read it overnight. I think I saw that post.
Really?
He
Okay.
literally read it overnight.
Yeah.
It
So
is
I
an
was
easy
like-
read. You can read it.
I
in
didn't.
one
Well,
day.
I wrote it like I talk, like real
Mhm,
simplified. But
mhm.
there's a lot of grammatical errors. So if you're an English teacher, watch out for that red pen because that's
This
what you can
ain't
do
this
when you
ain't for the
self-publish.
English teachers. This
Man,
ain't for the English teachers,
Wait,
man.
Nah.
This is for real life.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
why.
like-
So I'm working on recording it, so I can
should do
post it,
audiobook.
yeah, like an audio book,
Yeah.
and or video as a pod or whatever to like,
Hell yeah.
Substack or Patreon. I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, man, people pay like, $30 a month for Stat News or their Netflix account or, Paramount
Mhm.
or what. I was like, if I put out a chapter a month or something, plus, extra content that, gives, background info and Q&A. I don't know, like this. I'm just trying to think outside the box.
Yep.
all
Yep.
kinds
I
of
think
stuff to do.
we gotta work on some stuff, but I really appreciate you guys both coming on. It won't be the last time you're on. We'll have you
Oh,
on
let's do this again,
again,
man.
discuss
Let's-
other things.
yeah,
Yeah,
let's
this is
totally
too
do
fun.
this. I love it,
And
man.
we thank you, Chris. We're rooting for you, man, and we need more people like you and all the indications to get more involved in research, to get on the cutting edge of stuff. Because look at what could happen. This is like the ultimate bull case for someone who was given weeks, maybe months. And here we are 6 years later, right?
Yep.
On
100.
podcast, on live streams,
Yep.
Straight
and
up.
thinking about becoming advocates and going to more conferences, and
Yep.
that's powerful, man.
Yep.
Well,
Thank you
love,
so
man.
much,
Appreciate
Chris.
it.
And I wish
Thank
you
you
the
for
best.
sharing.
Good luck in New York, and
Yes,
just
sir.
everywhere you
Yes.
go, you talk about iovans and MTAGV, and it's just so powerful. And I wish you the best. And when you come back, let's meet up and have lunch.
Absolutely, my man. 100.
Thank you, brother.
Absolutely.
Everybody, go follow. Bye bye. Get the book too.